The good news for us as we make our budget recommendations is we have new money. We have additional money over and above what we've had in the past. And we have approximately $338 million of new money to add to our budget this year. So that's good news, again, and gratefully because of a healthy economy and expanding growth rate that provides additional job, economic creation, and new revenues for us to spend as we, the people of Utah, see fit. That $338 million is broken down thusly. $132 million of that money is one time, and $206 million of the money is ongoing. That means that our general fund money, our general fund, is going to be $5.7 million is the recommendation that we have. That's state collected funds that we have, what is referred to many times as the general fund or the education fund. But there's additional monies that we collect here in the state that I think have oftentimes been overlooked and ought to be recognized. And so I have a second chart, and I know that some of the press have got the budget book recommendations, but you can look on page 6 of your budget recommendation book. And this second graph talks about all the monies that are collected here within the borders of Utah for state budget purposes. And when you add those all together, we have a total budget there of $8.3 billion. The entire state budget that we're recommending is a total of $13.3 billion, which includes federal monies. Now, a couple of points here to make. When we talk about the monies that are collected in Utah, we have about $2.6 million, which are earmarked monies, our restricted funds, our transportation monies that are being spent, gasoline tax monies. We don't have a lot of flexibility. That has to be spent. But it's something that we ought to acknowledge that it is monies that comes and ought to have the same kind of scrutiny in the budgetary process as we have with other monies, which we have discretion and flexibility with. And lastly, on our overall budget of $13.3 billion, I know there's been some discussion about the percentage of federal monies that's a part of our own our state budget. The answer to that is it's 26.6% of our state monies that we have part of our state budget is federal monies. It's about $3.5 billion. Which, by the way, if you go back through the last decade, you'll find that that's about the historic average. 26.6% of our state budget has been federal monies for the last 10 years. It fluctuates a little bit up and down depending on the economy. You can all appreciate as the economy is more difficult, more people look to the government for help, more government assistance on some general welfare issues. When I came in, it was at 30%. So we actually are trending downward now as the economy improves and gets healthier. So nothing to be too alarmed there, I would think. Of the budget, again, I think, as I mentioned, our priorities are shown in the budget, and my number one budget priority has been historically education. The reason for that is because my focus is on growing the economy. I believe that if we're going to have the healthiest economy possible, certainly not only in the short term but the long term, we have to have a skilled labor force. That means education. And so the bulk of the new money that we have will be spent in the education arena. And my proposal is we have $261 million of new money that we'll put into the education budget. That will add to what we already have. We'll bring what we're spending just with Utah money alone. About $3.6 billion will be spent with Utah taxpayers' dollars into education. Again, that will be broken down. $169 million of this will be ongoing money, of which $124.9 million will go to public education, and $43.7 million will go into higher education, ongoing money. Our budget also includes the $92 million of one-time money. And that will be broken down $32.2 million, which will go into public education, and $59.9 million, which will go into higher education. Again, our focus, what rallies us together, what brings us together as a state, looking not only in the short term but the long term, is our goal and our vision to have 66 by 2020, improving the outcomes for post-secondary education. So again, that keeps us focused, and I think it's the goal that will bring us all together to the right place. Some specific areas where the money will be used. On public education, I know the big concern for the public education folks is what about the growth? We have a very fast-growing student population, and so $64 million will be put in the budget to fully fund the growth, which the consensus number from those in the public education arena is that's an additional 10,300 more students into public education. So $64 million to fully fund the growth in public education. We're also adding $61.6 million to put into the weighted pupil unit. That equates to a 2.5% increase in the WPU, which is the largest increase in the WPU since 2008. So a significant step forward to help with teacher salaries and those kind of needs that come out of the WPU for our public education folks. We're also putting $7.5 million in ongoing money into early intervention for our young people, particularly the opportunity for extended all-day kindergarten. For the software programs, again, discretion will be used by the districts as far as how they'll use that $7.5 million, but designed for early intervention for our at-risk kids in our state. We're adding $4.5 million into our STEM education, science, technology, engineering, and math. That, coupled with the $8.5 million that we had already previously put into our STEM center, will give us a total to spend this fiscal year of $13 million to help us with STEM education. Part of our alignment, part of our desire to make sure that our students line up with the demands and the growing, expanding areas of science, technology, engineering, and math in the marketplace. We also are putting $2 million in for a career counseling initiative, which is designed and aimed at helping us improve our graduation rates. We're lower than we ought to be. We can improve that, and we think counseling is going to be a first step in the direction of helping us improve our graduation rates, but also help get our students so that they're college and career ready. This is a first step. We think there will be some evaluation. We think there's opportunities to expand the counseling that we do here in the state of Utah, and part of this initiative will help us give some direction and put a plan in place to improve our counseling in our schools going forward. We're also putting $5 million into the budget for school supplies so that our teachers don't have to take money out of their own pockets, but there'll be money there available for them to purchase supplies as they need in the classroom. Again, I think this is a significant help for our public education folks. On to higher education. We've requested more than $100 million to be put into higher education, which will include $57.4 million to go to Weber State University for the construction of a new world-class science building. We're putting $19.3 million into ongoing equity funding designed to help with capacity issues. Again, part of our goal of 66 by 2020. UVU here is a perfect example of a school that probably has not had its fair share of the money and yet is picking up a significant load on this goal of 66 by 2020. And so this equity funding will be a step in the right direction as far as helping with capacity and equity funding with all of our universities around the state. We are going to put $3.9 million into our Utah Colleges of Applied Technology system, again, to help with capacity so that they can, in fact, teach more students. Again, we have more need for associate degrees, for certificates. This will help us with more students at each of our UCAT locations throughout the state. We're also putting $2.3 million for higher education into distinctive mission funding. Each university has its own unique, distinctive mission. This will help them address those issues, and with their unique challenges they face, have some money to address that issue with. We're also putting $1.5 million into a concurrent enrollment program which will be headquartered out of Snow College down in Ephraim. Again, designed to use technology-intensive instruction to help people with this concurrent enrollment to be more career and college ready, and particularly for those folks who don't have as much access, so those in our rural parts of the state. This will be a significant addition to helping them with concurrent enrollment and helping with career and college readiness. We're also going to put $1 million out there as a rewards program so that we can incent our institutions of higher learning as they improve their outcomes with improved quality, with increased retention, and with increased graduation rates. They'll be rewarded with some monetary gift as an incentive for them to improve. Now, those are just a few of the highlights for the educational initiatives. Again, there's a lot more detail in the budget book, but those are some of the critical things that you need to know about today. Let me just move on and talk about some other issues which are important too. Again, I've mentioned the importance of a growing economy, and there are areas that the government can do to help improve economic return. One of those areas is travel and tourism. We've seen the benefits through this past year of our increased efforts on tourism and travel, as we've increased that by about 7.8% this past year. So knowing that that's one of the few places where you can put taxpayers' dollars and actually get more money back in the investment, we're going to put $16.7 million into tourism and travel, working with our Sports Commission and others to bring in events here that bring in, again, economic opportunity. And depending on which graph you look at, it returns us 5, 6, or 7 to 1 on the dollars that are being invested. We're going to put $700,000 into marketing Utah businesses outside the state as we work in campaigns on areas that are out there that we have expertise in and some significant sectors of growth, whether it be aerospace, whether it be life sciences, medical devices, whether that be outdoor recreation. There's opportunities for us, in fact, to enhance our economy by, in fact, working with our businesses and working with those outside of the borders of Utah. Along with that, we are adding $387,000 to facilitate our Office of Economic Development, GOED, along with UDC Utah, Economic Development Corporation of Utah, as we work in conjunction in recruitment efforts for corporate recruitment and business expansion. And some of that you saw in the press about Boeing is taking a look at Utah right now as maybe a place to expand their operations. That's part of the efforts we've done in the past with corporate recruitment, and it's not lost on me that the first phone call that they made was to Utah when they decided to expand their operations outside of Seattle. We also are putting $4.9 million for small business development and rural outreach to some of our small business folks, not only in the Wasatch Front, but in the rural parts of Utah. Our bridge program, our mentoring programs to help facilitate and give a helping hand to those fledgling small businesses that are being grown here in Utah. And last but not least, $500,000 to put into what we call our ACE program, our Accelerated Credentialing and Employment Program, which is designed to help returning veterans particularly to find work and to get back into the marketplace, giving them credit for training they've already received and learning they've achieved in the military and their service there, so that they can shortcut getting certifications to go out and become a plumber or an electrician or a technician of whatever form, and getting credit for the training they've already received. Now, there's a lot of important issues. Let me just tick off a few of them rapidly here that I think are important for us to mention as we roll out the budget. A lot of discussion we have had over the last couple of years on the air quality of Utah, and particularly along the Wasatch Front and some other specified areas in the state. And to that end, I've asked for $1.8 million to do some proactive research on particularly the Wasatch Front, our unique airshed that we have here, our topography, our meteorology, and see what we can do to, in fact, find better ways to clean up the air. We have demands that are being put on us by the Clean Air Act. We want to be ready to adopt those and to do our part in cleaning up the air. So $1.8 million for this research that will be done. $1.3 million will go to our Utah Clean Air Partnership, oftentimes referred to as UCARE, which has helped us become more aware of the individual responsibilities we all have, and the fact that nearly 2/3 of the pollution that happens during our inversion days come from our tailpipes. We all have opportunities to, in fact, curtail our driving and do our part. We're also going to use $1.3 million to give grants to individuals, to businesses, to other entities out there in communities which are going to do something and need a little helping hand to get that new best practices in place. So $1.3 million for grants that will be available to help clean up the air. We're asking for $14.3 million to replace our aging school buses and other state fleet vehicles, which because of their age are in fact polluting too much. So we'll use that $14.3 million to replace buses and state vehicles with cleaner, more efficient, and alternative fuel vehicles. $600,000 will go into an energy loan fund, which will be used to increase the efficiency of our state government buildings so that we become more efficient in how we use energy. And not only will we have less pollution because of that, but our utility rates over time will go down, so that should be a win-win. And by the way, this was announced about a month ago, so this is not necessarily new, but it should be at least part of the rollout here today, and that is that we've negotiated a contract with UTA, the Utah Transit Authority, for transit passes for most all state employees. About 19,000 state employees will have transit passes so that they can use the buses, tracks, the front runner system, and take cars off the road. So we as state employees will start doing our part to help clean up the air by using mass transit. Let me talk about another topic, and that has to do with corrections. There's been a lot of discussion and talk about prison relocation out of Bluffdale, Point of the Mountain, and I think that's appropriate. And to that end, I'm going to put $3.5 million into our recommendation here budget to look at the possibilities and have monies available on the off chance and the possibility that there's going to be a prison relocation that occurs. So, but along with that, we're also not just talking about prison relocation. I think we need to take a more holistic approach to incarceration and not only look at the brick and mortar aspects of it, but also the programming. So we've got to understand what are we doing to get the best bang for the taxpayers' dollars to, in fact, not only incarcerate, but to rehabilitate prisoners. And so we're going to put $1.85 million in for the opportunity for us to reduce recidivism, implementing better programs, working with adult probation and parole, our counselors and advisors and programming to help, again, increase outcome or improve outcomes when it comes to reducing recidivism. We're also going to put $6.1 million into the budget to help defray costs and to pay for the costs with our friends in the counties because we use our county facilities for jail contracting, jail reimbursement for state prisoners that are housed in county jails. So $6.1 million to take care of the capacity and contracting rate issues there. We're also putting $36 million in to expand the Gunnison pod of the prison down at Gunnison. It's been on the drawing board for a long time. Regardless of what happens with the prison relocation, we need to have expanded bed space and capacity, and the Gunnison pod is not controversial, and it's the least expensive way to build additional bed space. So $36 million for the Gunnison pod expansion is also part of my recommendation. Our employees deserve a pat on the back. Our state employees are second to none in this country when it comes to efficiency, to finding effective ways to serve the public. They literally have been doing more with less. We have fewer state employees today than we did back in the year 2001, in spite of our dramatic increase in population of over 500,000 people at that same period of time. So we applaud our employees and we thank them for their work. We also are putting in our budget an increase in their salary of 1.25% for all state employees, which will consist of 1%, which is kind of a general pay increase for all employees across the board, and an additional 0.25%, which will be used for specific market and retention and equity issues that will be used to pay our great state employees. Part of the budget also fully funds a net increase of 2.2% of the state share of employees' medical benefits, and also 8.5% increase in retirement costs. So the employees with these rising costs are really basically being held harmless on those costs. And by the way, this is kind of equivalent to the pay increases we're recommending for public education and higher education and our state employees. So they're basically equivalent across the board as far as our recommendations in this budget. Healthcare issues, let me just mention a few there. We've put $1.5 million into the budget for mental health promotion, and particularly for mental illness prevention in our children. We put $17.5 million into the budget to help construct the Huntsman Cancer Institute building. That's the majority of that cost is about a $90 million budget building, and mostly all by private funds. The last part of the puzzle is the $17.5 million from the state, and they're ready to go. And so it's an opportunity for us to take advantage of this great new facility and research that's going to be done here in our midst by the University of Utah. Also, $2 million for the American Cancer Institute's Hope Lodge, which is designed for families. Again, most of that's private money that's coming in. Our $2 million will help them close the gap to have a facility for those who are going through cancer treatment and their families, opportunities to be together to help in the recovery process and the treatment. We also understand there's what I call safety net issues out there. There's people that need a little more of a helping hand. So in addition to what we already do in our baseline budget, we're putting $1.6 million into the Pamela Atkinson Homeless Fund. That trust fund is designed to help people that are homeless, and it's well used. We're putting $1 million to disability services. That's part of the waiting list for people trying to get help that have disabilities. $500,000 to the Road Home Shelter, and $500,000 to after-school programs designed to help with, again, early intervention for our at-risk children, for those who find themselves in poverty. We are finding that this intervention can break this cycle of poverty that is intergenerational, and so this is a wise investment of $500,000. Also, $200,000 for our refugee population. We have significant numbers of refugees. Some of you know we have Thurl Bailey as our ambassador to help us with our refugee needs here, and we're going to put $200,000 to help with those services. Now, let me just kind of conclude on a couple of points. One, I think all of us here understand, and certainly Utah has demonstrated historically, the importance of being fiscally responsible. There's a lot of room for criticism for other areas of our country, and certainly in Washington, D.C., where we have concerns that we're not being fiscally responsible. And someday, sooner or later, we're going to have to pay the piper on that. But in Utah, we've tried to live within the credence of, living within your means, not spending more than you take in, not having unreasonable debt. And because of that, we're just one of a handful of states that has a AAA bond rating in this country, which is telling about Utah. It's also telling about the direction the rest of the country is going, which is probably not so good. So part of our efforts to be fiscally prudent is, I believe, we are right at the bonding capacity. We've reduced it some, but this is a year we also ought not to borrow any more money. And so my budget envisions no additional borrowing and no additional bonding. Now, we spent a lot of time here talking about how we're going to spend money, and it's important to know, again, I think it does show kind of our prioritization of what we think is important as a government, as a people, where we put our money from the taxpayers. But we recognize these are sacred monies. These are things that we need to be very judicious in how we spend, that we ought to be very effective in how we get the outcomes and how we spend the money. And I would submit to you that the budget we've rolled out here today in its entirety is rational, it's reasonable, and more importantly, it's responsible. I think it finds the right balance points for those needs that we need to get and services from government without overburdening the private sector. What we don't want to do is do something that would kill the goose that's laying the golden eggs. We are a healthy economy and we are growing. And so we want to make sure we have the right mixture of tax obligation on the private sector with freedom to go out there and be entrepreneurs, to create wealth, to create jobs. And I think we found a good balance point in this year's budget in that regard. I also understand it's important to save money. I'm proud to be an 11th generation first cousin to Benjamin Franklin, who said a penny saved is a penny earned. It's in the bloodstream here for me. And I believe we need to find efficiencies in state government. And I'll just recall that at our State of the State address here this past January, that I talked about the fact that we in Utah will continue to find ways to be better and more efficient in how we spend the taxpayers' dollars. And I call upon our state employees and state government to find those innovative ways to be more efficient and more effective in spending dollars. And our goal, led by our great Kristen Cox of our Governor's Office of Management and Budget, is to find 25% more efficiency in state government by the end of 2016. And that goal is still in place. We're rolling out a significant budget of how we're going to spend money, but we are not going to lose sight of the fact we're going to find ways to spend it more effectively and become more efficient over the next few years in behalf of the taxpayers of Utah. My belief is as we do that, as we save money, as we spend money and prioritize correctly, Utah will continue to have great quality of life that is becoming the envy of most of the country. We'll have a robust economy which will continue to grow and expand and create jobs for the rising generation and the generation after that. And we'll have a great place to live and to raise families and to do business.